I need to share with you a few more things about my Pinarello prints, which I forgot to share with you in my actual review video. Stick around, why don't you? Hello everyone, how are you? This is yours truly, Diabetic Cycling, coming at you once again. This is a channel sponsored by and brought to you by none other than my own damn wallet. So this is as unbiased as one is gonna get. If that is your sort of thing, you like this kind of content, do support me by clicking on subscribe and hit the like button, and obviously leave questions and comments down below. Okay, so in this episode, I want to go over three things. The first item is something that I forgot to show you in my original Prince review video. Second thing is, in the original video, I actually mentioned that I was going to make a change to the bike. So we're going to go over that. And then third and final, there was a viewer question and I felt that it deserved a actual video response rather than some lengthy written reply, because I felt strongly about the questions that were in there. All right, so the first item, which is the thing that I forgot to show you in my actual review video, is this. So in that video, I mentioned and I talk about how the bike rides, where it feels very differently than like some other bikes, although like the bikes that I'm currently riding in my fleet. And you know, I still feel that Prince rides it rides like an untamed horse, and it just sort of eggs you on for more power, and it feels very lively is the way I would say it. And that's especially true as I spend even more time and putting more miles on that bike. Now, so taking a step back a little bit, once you get to a certain level of a bike frame and bikes and the wheels and as a bike as a whole, you're not really gonna see all that much of a difference. Like for instance, if you put Wout van Aert on a specialized Tarmac SL7, he's not all of a sudden going to get much slower because he's not riding his Cervelo R5. You know, consequently, same thing happens if you put Mathieu van der Poel on a Pinarello Dogma FF. Is he all of a sudden going to get so much faster? No. So, you know, the whole bike business and everything, you know, they're doing it for money, and they're sponsoring the teams for exposure so that the customers like you and I, you know, develop affinity towards a certain bike, and whether that's appearance, your heroes ride. So that's how they get in front of us and we end up buying those bikes, and that's how it goes. Is one so much better than the other? I actually don't feel that way. At the end of the day, you need to look at a bike and go, hey, that bike looks really nice. It makes you want to go ride more. It makes you feel faster. One may be a bit more comfortable than the other. One may be a little bit more aero than the other. One may be slightly lighter than the other. So those are the minute differences. But if you are just a enthusiast or you know, hobbyist rider, is that gonna really make that much of a difference? No. Now, having established all of that, let's establish one more thing before I get to my point, is when I do, you know, when any YouTubers, any review guys, when we go out and do these reviews, and especially when you're comparing one to the other, you must be aware of the environmental differences, right? The variables are not the same, because even if it's the same course, the same road, the same segment, if it's not written at the exact same time, your variables are going to change. So it's not very scientific if you look at it that way. And I'm just sharing with you all of this because I'm getting to a comparison of a ride that I did on my Prince, which is indicative of what I shared with you in the original video. So here's the deal. Now that I've established all that, now do keep in mind when I talk about different rides on this same route, they were all done on different day. I may have been feeling better or worse on certain days. I may have been with a group on certain days where the day I rode my Pinarello Prince on this 88-mile route, I was actually solo. So if you're with a group, obviously I was drafting behind guys as we take rotation. So energy would have been saved, which meant I would have been fresher. On certain days, I was also much younger. I have ride records on this particular route that I'm going to talk about from 2015, 2016. And on certain rides, I was on a much lighter bike. So, some days may have had headwind or tailwind, so all these things were different on all these days. Only thing common is actually the route itself, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about. So about 75 miles north of Los Angeles, there's this very mountainous course. It starts at like 4,000 feet above the sea level right out of the gate, and then through the 88-mile loop, the total climb is about 7,000 feet. Now, majority of that climb actually happens on the second half of that 88-mile course. And there's this one particular segment. It's a brutal climb, which I'm going to show you with a graph as I'm talking to you. So basically it's going to just gradually, then violently climbs to the apex of this mountain. Then you descend a little bit to recover. Then it's going to take you up, drag you up top again. Then you descend for a little bit again, and then you're going to go even higher up on the actual elevation to finish out the climb. So it's brutal. So mind you, before you even get to this point, because this climb starts right around 61 mile mark out of the 88, and you do this climb to finish it out. So the first 60 miles you've already ridden, so I'm already tired by this time. So it's just brutal every time I go. I head out there maybe twice a year. I can't ride there during winter because it snows actually, and then during summer it's way too hot to be out there, and there is no stores, anything like that where you could refuel or get any sort of help. So the route itself is brutal, and I'm going to talk to you about how I fared on that particular segment, the 28 mile, 27 miles or so of this brutal, just relentless climb. So as I show you my past records here, you're going to notice my PR record that you see up top, which is showing up at 2 hours and 18 minutes, done on April 2nd of this year. I took Pinarello Prince out on this ride to, gain experience and feel how the bike is. So I did the 88-mile route alone. I wasn't drafting behind anyone. I don't, all these days that I'm showing you right now, again, weather would have been different, all the conditions would have been different, so variables are different, therefore not entirely scientific. Don't come at me, bro. So having that established, just look at these records. So up until the day on April 2nd of this year, my personal best here was back in 2017, where I clocked in at 2 hours and 32 minutes. On that day, I was on one of my very favorite, top 3 favorite bikes of all time. I was on my Canyon Ultimate, which is about 2 pounds, if not more, about 2.5 pounds lighter than my Pinarello Prince. Also, I was with a group that day on my Canyon Ultimate, so I would have been a little bit fresher. I was 5 years younger, mind you, and I definitely was in a better shape back then. So if you compare that with the record that I took on April 2nd of this year, my personal best, there's 14-minute difference, despite I was alone. Now, I'm not kidding myself here. The bike itself was not a difference for 14 minutes. No bike is gonna give you 14-minute difference over 28 miles. That is ludicrous. So that is not what I'm insinuating here. However, having said all that, the bike definitely did feel light on my feet. Bike definitely did feel lively to a point where even though I was alone, I wasn't drafting behind earlier part of the course, conserving my energy of sort. And, you know, obviously older, and actually older to a point where my first digit of my age is now a different number at this time. So with that established, I mean, you could, this is a, you know, sentiment right here as an example what the bike felt like under me. I'm not saying, you know, if I go out there with a different bike, I would be slower or faster, but on that particular day that I was on my Pinarello Prince, you know, that's how much better that I rode that day. So I thought that was indicative of what I was sharing with you in the review, which I forgot to mention. So there you go. Okay, the second point that I wanted to bring up is that during the original review video, I mentioned how there is the wheels that I had on at the time are flawed, and that would be changed. So the wheels in the review video that you're going to see were the Zip 303S, and I've since then changed my wheels, and it took Prince to a whole different level, basically. I'm gonna have a separate episode as to the whole 303S and why I decided to change those wheels out. So that's gonna be a different episode. But since the change of the wheels, the bike obviously is even better under my feet and just superb ride every time. Matter of fact, I just did a century ride on my Prince just last weekend. Okay, and finally, the third thing that I wanted to go over in this video is the viewer comment, and I thought the comment deserved something better than just me writing a reply. So I'm gonna do a video response because I feel strongly about one of the questions that's on the viewer question comment. So the viewer asked basically two questions. I'm gonna attack the last question he asked first because that's short and quick. We can get that out of the way. The viewer asked, is the Prince the best bike you've ridden? That's almost like, I'm being a little hyperbolic here, but it's almost like, you know, is one of your kids better than the other kid? I mean, I love my kids equally. I don't know if I would say Prince is the best bike I've ever ridden. However, I would say it's definitely high up there as one of my favorite bikes I've ever ridden. And, you know, I've been lucky to own, you know, a couple dozen bikes over the last how many decades and ridden so many bikes under my ownership. But the Prince definitely culminates the whole design, engineering, and the feel that's tuned to on the frame and the fork. So it's definitely one of the favorite bikes that I've ever ridden. I don't know if it's the best bike I've ever ridden. But that's a little bit of a cop-out. I don't know if I can honestly tell you if a bike in my possession, in any of my history, I could say it's my favorite bike. I don't know if I could say that. Aforementioned Canyon Ultimate may come close to best bike I've ever ridden. But there you go. So let's get that question out of the way. Okay, then let's get to the second question. And this is the meaty part of this thing, where I felt strongly about this question, so I wanted to do this video reply to the commenter, the viewer that asked the question. So the viewer asks, I've been thinking about this bike. The bike shop, they've been telling me that the Prince is more of an endurance bike, and if I was going to buy a Pinarello, might as well buy the Dogma F. That's what the bike shop told this particular viewer. So let me talk about this question in general. I mean, I feel so strongly about this particular question. It also upsets me a little bit because of what the bike shop has told them. Now, you got to keep in mind, you know, I'm a business owner, and, you know, so the revenue and profit, that's all something that's very important to me and to any business. Now, if the bike shop told him and steering him to Dogma F because that has more profit, bottom line, I don't know if that's what they did. I don't know if this viewer is rather old, whether they're young. I don't know if it's super flexible or if it's stiff. I don't know any of this. So, but I'm going to answer this question this way. I have a problem with the bike shop told this gentleman. Now, if the gentleman has budget and that budget is unlimited, if you can spend $15,000 and it's not going to put a dent in your pocket, by all means, get the Dogma. Discussion ended. It's one of the most premium and coveted bikes in the world right now. And if you have the means to obtain one without suffering, sure, great. Obviously, it's a great bike. It's what Ineos and previously the Team Sky have been riding for how many years. So many tours have been won on this bike. I mean, it is the bike, right? So if you have the means to get one, great. Now, it comes down to, what if you don't have $15,000 burning a hole in your pocket? Then what do you do? Now, as far as Dogma and Prince, that's something that I try to share with you as much as possible, why I got a Prince instead of Dogma in my original review video. I have a means to get a Prince if I'm sorry. I have the means to get a Dogma if I wanted to. $15,000 is a lot of money, but it's not so much to a point where I wouldn't be able to afford one if I wanted to. Keep in mind, you could get two Princes for the price of one Dogma. So to me, it was about making my money work harder and kind of a smart money, more value for the buck and bang for the buck and all this stuff. Ultimately, it comes down to want versus need. Do we all want $15,000 bike? Sure, absolutely, why not? It's the best thing that's available. That's $15,000 price tag, by the way, is before any fancy like the oversized pulley wheels, Darimo or Schmoke carbon cockpits and the seat posts. I mean, all these fancy different things, the third-party things that you could add on, which would actually jack up the price tag even higher. So it comes down to want versus need. Now, we all want Ferraris and we all want Lamborghinis, but, you know, those of us who can't make that reality, we settle for something different that's more sensible to what our wallet would permit, right? So then I also have to ask you a question. Do you need a Dogma F? Now, consequently, you may need something slightly less aggressive in geometry because you're not as flexible as a tour riders, because you are older, because of, you know what. So you may need something different, but whether you need a Dogma F, are you a Cat 1 racer? Sure, then you may be able to take advantage of marginal gains such bike could provide. Top of the line components, Princeton Carbon Works wheels and all. That's what Team Sky has done. That's what Ineos Grenadier do, right? Looking for that marginal gain. Yes, the Dogma F is going to be a little bit lighter than the Prince. So would it go uphill faster? Maybe. I mean, I showed you my climb records on my this one route earlier in this video. I mean, that's a hellacious climb that I have to do every time I go there. And on my Prince, I was actually faster by 14 minutes over 28 miles versus a bike that was 2.5 pounds lighter, which was Canyon Ultimate, and I was even younger. So at this point, at our level, our enthusiast level, how important is it? So again, going back to the whole want versus need, I feel like I'm rambling on here, but do you need a Dogma F? Are you a tour rider? Do you need that marginal gain of like a 3 seconds of a gain that you're going to get over 40-mile route? Are you a Cat 1 racer that you need that marginal gain for $15,000? So it comes down to, yeah, I might want one, but do I really need that? And my decision was, no, I don't. And this whole thing about the bike shop presenting the Prince as a endurance bike, I have a hard time. I mean, if you look at the geometry chart, it's not very different than Dogma. Yes, the head tube is a little bit taller, but I've seen guys that ride Dogma with the spacers under the cockpit where the stack is higher than my Prince, where mine is slim because of the head tube length. So, and then the reach is no different than Dogma. I mean, reach is shorter to make it an endurance bike. And the tuning is, I don't feel it's necessary that it's an endurance bike. And I've owned endurance bikes in the past. Am I comfortable on Prince? Yes, I am, as an endurance, much like an endurance bike, but I wouldn't classify it as an endurance bike. Prince takes a lot from the trickle-down technology from the Dogma, where you're going to get the design cue. I mean, you look at side profile of the Dogma and the Prince side by side, you're going to notice the Prince took a lot of its design cue from the previous generation, the Dogma F bikes, like the F12s, F10, and some F8s. So that's still very much, the DNA is still here, and the tuning is, you know, it's just something they've borrowed from Dogma and engineering. Pinarello also has to do that because when you develop bikes and cars and all these different consumable goods, your research and engineering costs, if you could replicate more of it, then it lowers your overall manufacturing cost. You see what I'm saying? So if they developed two vastly different bikes and the molds are two vastly different molds and so on and so forth, you now are looking at Pinarello having to maintain development ecosystem of two very different bikes. But if they share common components, if they share common tubing, if they share common, or if the Prince is using molds from F10, which they already have in their production line, they're not redeveloping a mold for particular tube, right? So they're just recycling what they've already done. Therefore, Prince is borrowing a lot from Dogma. Is it as new as Dogma F that modern day 2022 Ineos Grenadier riders are riding? No. Do I see a lot of F12, F10s, and F8s in the Prince? I absolutely do. So, having said all that, like I said in the conclusion of my review video, I may be curious what a Dogma is, but I am not jealous or envious of a Dogma. And that is not because I cannot afford one. That is because I made a sensible choice that I was going to make my money work harder by making a sensible choice. I spent half of the money of Dogma to get 95% of that bike by going with a Prince. So I hope that was a good answer to the original the viewer who asked the question. I disagree with what the bike shop told you. I don't see this as an endurance bike, number one. Number two, if you're going to get a Pinarello, you might as well get a Dogma, which is what the bike shop told you. I don't necessarily agree with that either, unless you could take advantage of the Dogma's selling points. A little bit lighter, a little bit newer, uses lighter carbon, all of that considered. If that benefits you with the marginal gain of you racing out there, and the price tag doesn't put a dent in your pocket, then yes, bike shop told you properly. However, if you're not in that situation, and if you don't need that kind of marginal gain, you're not, I mean, on a Saturday group, at Saturday group ride, do you really need marginal gain? I mean, yeah, group rides can get spicy, but I just don't see, unless the bragging rights is important to you. I don't agree with what the bike shop told you. Now, that's my opinion. Another guy may feel differently, but my whole thing on this channel is about just sharing with you my honest opinions and thoughts, and that's what I'm presenting to you today. All right, that's it for me. This video, again, probably is longer than I wanted it to be, but I wanted to share with you those things, those developments and things that I forgot to share with you. So that's that, and I'll come back to you with another episode within the next few weeks. And until next time, you guys take care, be safe out there. I've been Diabetic Cycling. You've been awesome. Keep the rubber side down, boys. Take care.